again, I'm Joe, and this is Embedded. So, photojournalism has been a field that's interested me for a really long time. One of the main things that interests me about it is how photojournalists have to make choices about what they're going to include on the page. There's not room for everything, so they have to make editorial decisions about what to include. And often they have to pick the content versus the quality. So maybe there's a photo they think represents their feelings better, but there's a photo that is compositionally nicer to look at, and they have to make that decision. So Embedded is a VR photography game about journalistic choice. In Embedded, you play as a photojournalist that's embedded with a team of soldiers during the Vietnam War. In the game, you witness history, capture your experience, and choose what millions will see back home. So there's two main phases of gameplay. We have shooting photographs and asking questions. In the shooting photograph section, you are riding along on rails with the team, taking pictures of what you see as you go. In asking questions, you can walk around a small area, approach people, and ask them questions about the conflict. So in our first phase, shooting photographs, you're taking pictures of dramatic moments of struggle, conflict, triumph. This section is an on-rails. It plays like an on-rails shooter, so you're sitting in a car, driving along a set path. You don't control where it goes. There's a soldier driving the car. You're just there to take pictures and capture what you see. And at the end of this section, you pick which photos you want to save for publication. And the photos are judged based on their sentiments, whether they're pro or anti-war, and based on their quality, so the composition and the technical quality of the photo. You could be taking pictures of civilians fleeing their village, like you see here, or you could be taking pictures of soldiers heroically carrying out their mission. Part of the inspiration for this section comes from a game called Pokemon Snap. It plays very similarly mechanically. The tone is obviously completely different, but that's where a lot of the inspiration for this mode comes from. In the second phase, we have asking questions. So in this mode, you can approach soldiers and civilians and ask them a set of questions that range from a perspective of pro and anti-war. And depending on what kinds of questions you ask, you get different answers that have different sentiments. And then these quotes that you capture will be published in your article later as well, alongside your photos. Here's some concept art of different characters that you would encounter in the game. So at the end of this two-phase cycle, you are presented with an article that has your photos and text that is chosen based on the overall sentiment of your photos and your quotes. So if you took really anti-war photos the whole game, your text is going to be something that maybe calls for the administration to put an end to the war. And if your photos were really pro-war the whole time, maybe they call for like a surge of troops or something along those lines. And the prestige of the publication that you're in depends on the quality of the photos. So you have this kind of tension between the quality and the sentiment. So maybe you took a photo that has a villager lying dead in the mud or something, and that really captures how you feel about you really feel that's representative of what you saw, but maybe the framing is a little bit off or something. And there's another photo of a soldier doing something heroic that's framed really nicely, is technically a really good photo, but you feel it doesn't represent your experience there. You have that tension of what do I pick? The framing for the whole game is that you are a veteran photojournalist that's looking back on their career. So like when you start the game, you're sitting at a desk and you're looking through like your memory box, and those memories are what trigger you to go back into these levels and do these two phases of gameplay, and then you pop back into the present time and you can see the article that was published as a result of your actions. And so at the end of the game, once you do, our plan is to have 3 of these cycles of taking photos, interview, article, and at the end of those 3, you find a letter that was mailed to you, and it was someone your photographs had a strong impact on their life in some way, and that depends on the overall sentiment of your photo. So if you took really anti-war photos the whole time, maybe it's a villager who thought that you shed light on their hard times, or maybe someone in like the anti-war movement who thought your photos provided good fodder for them. Took pro-war photos, maybe it's like a soldier who thanks you for telling their side of the story that they think the media was biased against, or something along those lines. So under the hood, we've been using Unity to develop for VR. We are on Vive and Rift, using Steam VR to develop for both of those. So far, our on-Rails aspect has been keeping our assets to a limited amount that's achievable for us, because we have a limited amount of artists, and there's not much AI in terms of like controlling movements. Most of our AI is just about analyzing the photos, so that makes it a lot easier for us to develop the world. Our goal is to have 3 levels by next semester. Right now we have 1 that still needs some work, but I think it solidly demonstrates our core mechanics and what our game's about. Our sentiment analysis is done with authoring, so we're not using any fancy AI there. All of the sentiment analysis is pre-authored based on what characters you take a picture of, so we can assign the characters in the scene various sentiments, and then if those characters are in your photo, that's how we can judge the sentiment. And our quality analysis is done based on the subject's position in the frame, and then we have a kind of complex spreadsheet that analyzes based on the position, like how many points you should get. And that's based on the rule of thirds, so depending on where the subject is in the frame, that's how many points you get. And the rule of thirds says that when subjects lie along one of these thirds lines, it's considered a good picture, and especially if it's at an intersection point, that's like a really good picture. So that's how we're judging the quality of our photos. And this is part of our team. We have more that couldn't fit on the slide, but everyone's been working really great this whole semester. I think we've gotten a lot done, kind of more than I expected to get done this semester, so I'm really happy about that. We also have a couple artists that aren't listed here, and everyone's been working really hard. And we recently got some people from Mika on our team who've also been helping us out a lot, prepare for the showcase and all that good business stuff. So yeah, that's embedded. If I can direct your attention to the back, we'll do our live demo back there.
Can real quick start with the demo.
So Khan's going to demo for us, and I'll commentate along with to explain what's going on. So this is our title screen. We have you can save your game and load it, so that's fun. But Khan's going to start a new game here.
So it's a seated experience, so I'm just going to take my position. Right, so we can start the game.
And
so here with our desk.
Looking through your memories, and in your memory box you'll find a camera that glows, so you want to touch it. And then that brings you back to this scene here. based on a real historical event called the My Massacre, which is like one of the worst instances of the U.S. Army kind of doing bad things in Vietnam. And a lot of the images here are based on real photographs. And so then this is going to bring us into our selecting photos scene. So you can scroll through the film strip here. Right now it lists the sentiment and quality. That's just kind of for our own debugging. That's not going to be in the final product. That will kind of, the feedback for that will be based on the article that you receive. So you don't have any number, like the player won't have any real numbers to represent this to them. They'll just kind of have to use their instincts on this part, and that's part of the interesting part of the play is selecting which photos and seeing how that affects your article at the end, and not being exactly sure. And so something, if you see here something has a negative sentiment, that means it's from negative 10 to positive 10, so negative 10 is all the way anti-war, positive 10 is all the way pro-war. Then when you get to the end here, you can select to go on to the next stage, which is the interview. And so here you can teleport around the scene and approach different soldiers in the scene, but in the future we'll also have civilians and villagers that you can talk to. And when you get close enough, you can wave at them, and there's voice acting for this part.
We got word that enemy forces were hiding out here, so we went in and took them down. We protected American lives and killed some commies.
So there's three questions. One that's like an anti-war, one that's neutral, one's pro-war perspective. So you can see like, what about the women and children is an anti-war? What were the civilian casualties is more neutral, and how many Viet Cong did you take down is more of a pro-war perspective on the question. And you get different answers based on that.
What about them? Viet Cong could be anyone. They're not picky. You can't take any chances when we're out here defending democracy. They need our help. Without us, this whole country would be commies. Bye.
This one doesn't work for someone. It used to play.
Yeah, there is voice acting for this, but it's not here right now, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. I got my draft card, all the instructions. Didn't have much of a choice. Trying to stay alive. Maybe others are here because they believe in it. But I was trying to get back home and see my family. My mama writes me every day. She just wants me to come home safe. Don't hear too much from Dad. He knows the risks. Stay safe.
So then you go back and talk to your driver to exit the level. And so then you're presented with the article now. The text is incoming, and we'll be here by the showcase, but this is what it is right now. It selects your photos based on the most representative of your overall sentiment. So, yeah, and all of the underlying stuff for picking different article text and displaying is there. We just don't actually have text to display at the moment, but it will be there by Wednesday. And that's the game so far. Thank you.
Can you tell me more about the prestige mechanic and the placement of the article? I'm sorry, the prestige mechanic, what do you mean by that? Is that, for example, give me an example of an article held with great prestige versus one that has low prestige?
Yeah. So if the photos that you select to publish all have a good quality score based on that rule of thirds analysis that we do, then your article will be published in a more prestigious newspaper. So, like the New York Times, for example. I mean, we don't have the rights to the New York Times, but some mock of the New York Times. And then, if the photos that you selected all had a bad quality rating, then it would be pushed towards maybe some local newspaper that looks more dingy. And then also the plan is to edit the article so like the grammar is worse and maybe not as compelling, like the stories aren't as compelling for depending on that prestige.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
Do you have a main storyline for this game?
Yeah, so this framing device of you're a veteran photojournalist looking back on your career is kind of our main storyline. And so in that framing device, like at that table where you grab the camera, our plan is to have more stuff to play with. So like maybe there's a picture of some other journalists that were friends of yours and like letters from them, or maybe like some receipts from some meal you had, or like a crushed up cigarette box, or little trinkets and memorabilia that kind of remind you. of your
Will you
time.
add some like real person, historic characters in this game?
You're not playing a historic character, but there are people from history in the game.
So like real person in the history.
A couple, yeah. So like, there's a lot of these really famous photographs from Vietnam that we're going to be recreating. So like, at the beginning of this level, you saw that like pile of bodies is a real historic thing that happened at the My Lai massacre. So like that's recreating that, and then the goal is to maybe have some actual historical people that you could talk to, but something like that isn't in the game yet, but certainly these like historical recreations of photographs are. So yeah.
Last question?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, you were talking about like quality versus like perception of like how you want to go about, when you're doing the experience. Have you thought of like different features for the camera itself, whether or not you zoom in, which usually makes the quality less good, but then you get a more like centralized version of the photo, so things like that, flash, and anything like that. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so talking with one of the people on our team is Yael Swerdlow, who is an actual photojournalist and has been like a really good point of reference for talking about like what was historical about photojournalism back then, like what it was like. And a lot of the times photojournalists would just have the one lens and that didn't zoom, and it was during the day, so it didn't flash. And sometimes they would swap out lenses, which we talked about and are considering doing for next semester, but yeah, that's why there's no zoom in the game.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you very much.